Welcome to Confirmation Bias, presented by the League Ambassadors.
I'm Ambassador Kenny Kid Ken, and I want to hear about the sports guy that Pete was talking about, and that's my confirmation bias.
Oh, shit.
So go on, tell us about
Oh, God.
and that's Les's confirmation bias.
Well,
Pass it on.
just hey, come on, Pete, bring it home to us. Tell us about this shit.
I mean, I was going to talk about Golden State's hairline and they barber, but I want to hear what he got to say now.
Hey, well, somebody has to take one for the team. I'm Ambassador Chef Curry in a new location, and never thought I'd admit the Indianapolis 500 is more interesting than the NBA playoffs tonight. And that's my confirmation bias.
Welcome to Confirmation Bias, episode 23. As a reminder, you can follow us everywhere on social media. Our handle is @TheLeagueAM. That's Twitter, that's Facebook, that's Instagram. Also visit our YouTube channel, League Ambassadors, and then our website, www.theleagueam.com. Pay special attention to the section on our website, the page on our website that's called Diplomatic Community. It's the place where sports fans of all shapes, sizes, colors, and creeds can write about whatever it is that's going on in their minds, in their world as it pertains to sports. On today's show, we have, for the second time, and will definitely be for the last time, Chief Diplomat Pete Giovine. He's our NASCAR expert. Last week, we had a very fun show, trivia contest around NASCAR. This week, it's our turn to ask him questions. He wanted to talk about the sports writer, and we're going to take a guess and say that the sports writer who was a racist.
Right.
And so you can talk about that a little bit. We actually talked about it on our last show. But then also just give us your impressions of the Indianapolis 500 before we get going with our questions for you.
Awesome. Yeah. So, I was referencing, without realizing that we were already ready to go, the sports reporter from the Denver Post, he got fired because he tweeted that he was uncomfortable with a Japanese driver winning the Indianapolis 500 during Memorial Day weekend. Obviously implying the Japanese history and the American involvement, I believe, in World War II is what he was getting at there. I think personally on that, it's a tweet, and I don't think it was a smart tweet to write. I can't tell anymore whether when people get fired, it's a good thing or a bad thing. But I was really fired up that a Japanese driver did win that race because it was an exciting race to watch, and they do have some great drivers. So.
And I think this is one of the questions, actually, and it'll be a perfect segue, Dev. One of the questions that he had as far as the difference between Indianapolis 500 and...
Yeah, so my question was, obviously you said that you do, but do NASCAR fans in general follow other types of racing like the Indy Series or drag racing or the Formula One across the pond?
Right. So NASCAR fans usually, NASCAR fans technically, NASCAR is their wheelhouse. They do like other sorts of auto racing, but it's a different kind of auto racing. First, when it comes to Indy or Formula One, it's open wheel, which means your wheel is exposed. If you make any sort of contact, it's going to destroy you and your friends. whoever you're hitting. It's when those wheels catch up, you're in trouble. A NASCAR has a covered wheel well, so the tire itself that is moving is you can kind of bumping is racing in NASCAR, whereas in Indy or Formula One, bumping is wrecking. So it's a different kind of sport. I spoke to Jeff Gordon one time, and he told me that that the difference.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Name drop. Insert name drop.
Right.
Hold up.
Yeah.
We saw Jeff Gordon at Fresh Brothers in the Marina. He's the most unassuming character you would ever see in your life.
So you believe him, in other words?
I believe
Yeah,
him.
no, he's chill. He's a chill dude. I walked up to him.
Did you really name you just on the ground?
I saw him at a party, and I just asked him. I'm like, what do you think about how NASCAR is perceived versus Formula One and Indy? And he said, it's NASCAR is a regional sport in its history. When you look at Indy or Formula One, it's very European. The Italians, the Ferrari. There's a lot of the Andretti family is very involved. And I thought it was funny what he had told me. He said, yeah, because the major difference is this: in NASCAR, the engine crosses the finish line first. Whereas in the other series, the driver crosses the. He goes, and NASCAR is about the engines. So that's kind of
interesting.
That's a very philosophical sort of
like a shot.
Yeah. But as far as I as a race consumer that I am, NASCAR to me is so much about the personalities. It's a traveling circus, and there's so many more storylines to it. So to me, I enjoy that more. When you look at F1 and IndyCar racing, so much about is the history of the manufacturers, the teams. It's more of a science game with the engines and how they pull that off. Now, it's not as exciting to me when I watch the Indy or the F1.
So you spoke about F1 and Indy, but is drag racing like the super duper step little brother?
That's like let's do some meth. and watch some drag racing
at the same damn time.
The races are seconds long.
Right.
Not if you're on meth.
It might be a second. It might feel like an hour.
Oh man!
But for me, I mentioned last week, with NASCAR, there are so many different storylines. And anytime when someone wins a NASCAR race, no matter who it is, there's a storyline there. Like, for example, the last race that was on Memorial Day, the Pepsi 600, which NASCAR had to make it 600 miles because the Indy is 500 miles. So that's, it's a competition type deal.
Pissing
but
contest.
the guy who won it was Austin Dillon riding the number 3 car. That was Dale Earnhardt's number, and it was retired for several years. And it was the first time that the number 3 has been to victory lane since Dale Earnhardt passed away 17 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So there is, so I get goosebumps saying that. You know what I mean? Like, there's always, no matter who wins, there's a story behind it, and to me that's more enjoyable.
That's really interesting about the stories, because I don't know, I can't really I think football, for example. Do we get caught up in stories?
Yes.
Yeah.
We had
but you're
specifically from February to August, you get caught up in stories.
We had an award about stories.
No. But but he said sentimental. He's given a couple of examples of
Brett Favre
sentimental
when his
shit.
dad passed, going on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, but when your football team doesn't win, and it's like some team that you don't like, they win, you rarely take enjoyment out of that. You know what I'm saying? There's not as much enjoyment. Whereas in NASCAR, my favorite drivers cannot win that race, but I can find joy in whoever did win that race. Because whether he was an underdog, he's never won a race before, or he's there's some aspect or some story, or he just beat cancer or whatever it is. There's all of these crazy storylines that no matter who wins a race, there's something of value in that victory.
I'm just not built that way. Can't do it. You're not on my team. You can have cancer all you want.
Oh my god. Oh my.
So I got a good NASCAR question for you.
Okay.
How much do you spend in a year on hair products?
I'd have to ballpark it at somewhere between $500 to $800.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. But dude, I'm all hair and teeth. I look like an Italian Jimmy Neutron.
Oh no! Oh, okay, that's
not
great.
lying.
He's spot on. Wow.
Touche. So.
Yeah.
Kevin, please get us back on track.
Oh my God. I'll get a little technical with this one. Can you explain the dynamic of a driver's like pit crew? Are they a part of their team? Do guys get fired? Have they ever cost a driver a race before?
Right. Pit crew is vital to a race team. So they are a major part of the race team. Any good driver that wins a race knows that his pit crew was vital in doing so. NASCAR pit crews in their off season, which is very short, they actually they go and speak to Fortune 500 companies about organizational communication. It's about moving these 6 guys over the wall and one other guy who doesn't actually cross the wall. And do this delicate dance and change 4 tires and fill up a race car and be done in 12 seconds. To do that, you need impeccable understanding of where everyone else is, the trust to know that that person is doing their job, and to get that pit crew properly working. To answer your question, as far as how vital they are, Kev, it's huge. A driver can come in down pit lane and be, let's say in 3rd position. If he has a good pit stop, he can leave in 1st position. So when the green flag drops, he's now in 1st instead of 3rd. The pit crew did that. He didn't do anything. Everyone that comes down the pit lane is coming down at the same speed. So a pit crew could actually really help your track position just by performing better than other pit crews. So they're a vital part of it. Vital part of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Okay, so, this show, last show, we've heard a lot of good stuff, a lot of interesting stuff, but why, in your opinion, do you feel like NASCAR isn't a mainstream sport in America?
That's a good question. I think there's a lot of stigma attached to it. I think that, because it's regional, because it's Southern, in my opinion, and I can tell you this, dude. I started watching NASCAR when I was living in New York City. And no one, I'm a city boy watching NASCAR. It didn't make sense to anyone. I just feel like a lot of people think that it's there's racism or there's a connection to the Confederacy, and there's this weird. I think there's a lot of people that like to make fun of NASCAR. Again, like I said last week, it wasn't until I watched the sport and realized how many moving parts were in it that I was so impressed that these guys were able to do what they do. And you need to be running on all cylinders, pardon the pun, to really be competitive in NASCAR. So I think it's not a mainstream sport because it just has a bad stigma attached to it, and I think a lot of people think things about it that don't know anything about it. It's really just I want to claim ignorance.
Classic ignorance.
Yeah, I would say ignorance on it. Honestly, if you give it a shot and just and just watch some of the races, or you don't have to sit down and watch a whole race. You can just have it on and just and just kind of pay attention here and there. It's very, very exciting. And we're talking about the pit crew. The pit crews now, these guys train. They used to be just fat dudes, and now it's these guys train. They could bench. They're big dudes that can move, that are very agile. So there's a lot of athleticism in driving. And in being a pit crew.
Where did this milk celebration come from?
That is that's in IndyCar. That was at the that's at the Indy 500.
Yeah.
I forget the history of it, but I think it was one driver one year didn't want to celebrate with champagne or something like that, and they gave him milk, and it was I think one of the first televised ones or something like that, and then people connected that to that. The NASCAR series races at Indianapolis. It's called the Brickyard 500, and their tradition is kissing the bricks. I don't know if they do that in Indy, but the drivers and the start and finish line is bricked. Where you start and finish the race, and the driver and the crew will get down on their hands and knees, even the wife of the driver.
That was funny.
Yeah. And they'll get down and kiss the brick. So yeah,
Kiss the brick.
Yeah.
Kiss the brick.
Exactly. So I don't know the milk thing. I don't know exactly. I that's one thing I don't know.
So it has nothing to do with DUIs or anything like that.
Right, yeah. Just some guy addicted to just milk. It's I need more milk at the end of this race.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe NASCAR's Super Bowl is at the beginning of the season.
That's correct.
Why
right.
is that?
The NASCAR, because, NASCAR is a long season. It runs from February and it doesn't end until, the end of November. So they really just have December and January off. That's considered their off season. The biggest race of the year that they have is the Super Bowl of the series, which is the Daytona 500. That is at the beginning because at the end of this season, there's going to be a champion of, through points, but the significance of Daytona, so much of NASCAR's popularity started in Daytona Beach. Excuse me. They used to run races on the beach. Then they built the Daytona Super Speedway, and it was really sort of this big celebration to start the season, and it's bragging rights for the entire year. If you win a race in NASCAR now, you're already going to go to the playoffs. Okay, their version of the playoffs now, which is called the Chase. So this is just sort of the most anticipated race of the year because it's the first race of the year. But they figure why have it at the end when we're going to crown a champion at the end at a racetrack eventually. Let's have a big party now.
Do the winners typically of the Daytona 500? Do they just like check out? It's like, oh, I won,
right?
And then I'm just chilling for the rest of the season.
I mean, some do, but what it now affords you to do now. Before, you used to have to consistently perform well throughout the year under that point system. Now, because when you win a race anywhere during the season, you're able to go to that final chase. Guys can use their season to experiment with different setups at different racetracks, right? So now instead of playing balls to the wall, now they're like, oh wait, what if we try a different setup on this racetrack? This racetrack's a 1.5 miles long. We're gonna hit 3 more tracks at 1.5 miles long, and then when we get to the chase, 2 of the tracks are gonna be 1.5 miles long. Let's try to find out the sweet spot setup to get this car the fastest it can go.
Makes a lot
right,
of sense.
and you don't have to sacrifice any points because it's like, no, you're good. You're going to the chase.
Simple question.
Yeah.
Are there rainouts?
There are. The way that NASCAR handles rain is this. If it does rain, NASCAR's best intention is to get the race happening that day. Because people come in and it's a big operation. A lot of these races, about 200, 300,000 people at a racetrack. You want to make sure we try to get this race happening. So what they do is they will have a rain delay. They'll let the rain pass, and then they have these jet dryers that will dry the track off. And they'll try to race that day. A lot of the tracks have lights now, so they can race at night. Okay, but here's the deal: if a race goes over halfway, so if the race is, let's say, 500 laps, and they're at lap 300, and it's raining and it's not letting up, they can call the race then as an official race, and whoever was in the first position wins the race. So it's kind of like the fans don't love that, the drivers don't love that, but that's how it is. Usually, if it doesn't go over halfway, they'll just throw a red flag on the race and they'll race the next day. So
and everyone will start from this position they were in
exactly.
previously.
It'll be the field is frozen and they go from where they were at.
Because I made that one up on the spot because I was going to ask you how long it takes you to do your hair. And I felt like we were in a good groove. I didn't want to fuck that up.
The hair does not take too long to do, to answer your question. Everyone's like, what holds up your hair? It's like, it's just other hair. I have a lot. I just have a lot of hair on my head.
Well, you mentioned the sport has a lot of different personalities. Is there like a bad guy of NASCAR, like someone that everyone hates to see win or always roots against?
Right. There's a guy named Kyle Busch who's very successful now, and
I know Kyle.
He was a guy that in the beginning, you'll see a lot of the younger drivers, they're feisty on the racetrack, and so much of racing, especially with the veterans that have been around for so long, is what they call racing me clean, right? If you race me clean, that means that you can go side to side with me and we can race laps and duke this thing out without you getting into my left rear and taking me out. Okay, that's racing someone clean. Kyle Busch made a lot of his, initial impressions on NASCAR with pretty dirty racing, and that got under a lot of people's skin. It got under the fan skin. So he would come out, they would announce him Kyle Busch, and he would just get booed by 200,000 people.
So like Bill ain't beer?
Yeah, it was exactly. People loved to hate him. And then over time, he after we would win a race, he would do this really sarcastic bow to the crowd. Like he would take the checkered flag and then he would just do this sarcastic, terrible bow. And people loved to hate him.
Yeah.
But then over time, people realized, he also matured a lot. He stopped racing people dirty, and people realized he was just a great racer. So NASCAR fans, they even if they hate you, they'll still respect that you're a great race car driver.
That's pretty
No
cool.
one was more feared than Dale Earnhardt, though. The Intimidator.
Yeah.
Omar.
Just wait for my next one.
But he was. They called him the Intimidator because when he was in your rear view mirror, he drove a black car, the number 3, and he did not give a fuck. He would take you out. He would just race you in a way where you did not want this guy behind you. A lot of drivers would say the worst position you could be in was the position in front of Dale Earnhardt Sr. because you knew it was you were stressing it and you were just hoping he would just get around you without wrecking you.
Sticking with personalities in NASCAR, one of the other questions that we like to ask when it comes to these non-mainstream sports is, who would you say is the Biggie Smalls of NASCAR? Meaning the person that maybe came out and they started out really hot, and then for one reason or another, whether it be tragedy or something else, they kind of flamed out, and so it was like potential unfulfilled.
Right, man. There's a guy named I'm trying to think of his name. There's a race car driver in the 80s. I'm trying to think of his name. I can't think of him.
Kevin, get ready.
Google it. No, there's a race car driver who was a big personality. It was Evans, I think his last name was. He was always fast. He was known to party. He would just show up to the racetrack, coked out of his mind. And everyone was like, "This guy is the man," and he was so much fun. So much fun to watch.
I'm only going left. I can do this.
Hold on. Kevin.
Richie Evans?
It's not Richie Evans. I'm gonna find out real fast. So anyway, his demise was he had this party lifestyle. NASCAR, because it wasn't Evans. I'm sorry, I put you on a red herring there. His name was Tim Richmond. Tim Richmond was just a showman. He was an amazing race car driver, but he partied a lot. NASCAR did not like that he partied a lot, and he was so fast. He eventually died of AIDS.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Oh wow! I was not expecting that.
He was living real fast.
Oh, he was living loose.
Yeah, but the crazy thing was when he was sick, he would always claim that he had like pneumonia or something, and then he would get in a race car and.
Yeah, he wasn't lying.
Omar, that's 2 age jokes.
Well, I was gonna say he was one show late.
But he was like when he was sick with HIV, he would still just fucking just blow away everyone, finish first place, and then just take it to the trailer. But he could have been someone.
Oh my God.
He could have been someone bigger than he was.
Was it like an open thing that he had AIDS?
No one at the time, we're talking in the 80s where no one was admitting anything. His family didn't even admit what was going on. NASCAR didn't really admit what was going on. And eventually, he was kind of let go or told not to compete because they were suspicious that he had AIDS. And everyone was so scared of AIDS at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Karl Malone syndrome.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, if he had more time, I mean, he was what a personality and what a driver. He could have been something.
Jimmy Johnson has dominated for the last 10 years.
Unbelievable.
What makes him a cut above the rest?
Jimmy Johnson came into the sport. I want to say in 2005 or 6. Between 2006 and 2017, so we're talking about 11 years, he's won 7 championships.
Right.
It's unbelievable. The equipment, he's with Hendrick Racing, which is, they're known for the best equipment. When he came into the sport, he had Jeff Gordon, who was an amazing race car driver, as his mentor. In NASCAR, so much about this sport, you're going to a different track every week. And it's not about racing the other drivers, it's about racing the track. Good race car drivers race the track. That's who your opponent is. It's not the other drivers. The other drivers are peripheral. It's about racing the track. And Jimmy Johnson had Jeff Gordon in his pocket and in his ear just giving him all the best advice. He had all the best equipment in the sport, and he also has an amazing crew chief that, they argue like they're a married couple, but these guys get it done. So he just had a magic team from the beginning, and they didn't change anything. A lot of successful NASCAR racers through the years, the car owner will switch up the pit, the crew chief and to shake things up because he wasn't happy with the races he ran last year or something like that. Jimmy Johnson, that's never happened. He's had the same team with him the entire time, and he's just consistent.
Consistency.
Yeah, just consistency. And he's also a nice guy too. He didn't make a lot of enemies. So a lot of people it is a sport of personalities. If you're a dick, you're going to lose races because people are going to take you out because you did things in the past.
Right.
Yeah.
No one's gonna justify when Kyle Busch took Jimmy Johnson out one race. That was the race that everyone was like, all right, we're done with this guy. Like Kyle Busch, like he was booed ever since that. And it was Jimmy Johnson who he took out in a race.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Can't have any LeVar Ball dads in the.
I'm pretty sure there are though.
Oh, they don't speak up. So I heard somewhere that about 90% of drivers endure varying levels of monoxide inhalation during a race. One, have you heard of this? Is this a big thing? And two, is NASCAR looking to change anything about this? Is this dangerous?
Yeah, NASCAR's on top of it. They have a great ventilation system that's in their helmets that pumps fresh air to them when they're in the race car. It is an issue, though. So much of this sport, you'll see guys get out of 500-mile races and they can barely stand up.
Right.
It's not, it's not just because, like I was telling you guys last week, their heart rate is up the entire time, like a marathon runner. I mean, that's no question. They do lose, 10, 15 pounds of water weight. That's real. But also, they are sucking in fumes, man. I mean, it's their cars. There was a wreck last week or 2 weeks ago, and there were like two cars like violently on fire, and you can't imagine, you can't pretend that no one is taking this in their lungs. I mean, they can feel that. Yeah, they can. Yeah. As long as you're breathing by a wreck, you're taking in those fumes and those toxins.
This is actually perfect. Because speaking of fumes and environment, do you use environmentally safe products on your hair?
I don't use any hairsprays.
Because
Omar.
if you don't, you seriously put a hole in the ozone. We should name one of those holes after your hair if you do not.
Yeah, it's like the Valdez on my head. That's stock and Exxon. Luckily, I don't use any hairsprays, Omar.
And he didn't even know he was setting me up for that.
The no look pass.
Yes, half court live.
Oh man.
But I'll tell you guys, just going back to Jimmy Johnson real fast.
Is that your Michael Jordan? First of all,
I was going to say this because I know you guys asked those questions about the Michael Jordan, the Biggie. The Michael Jordan of the sport, I would imagine, there's only 3 drivers that have 7 championships, and that's Dale Earnhardt, Richard Petty, and Jimmy Johnson.
Okay.
Jimmy Johnson is the only one in the modern era that we know now that has the consistency that he does. So he is the modern day Michael Jordan of the sport. If we were talking, before he entered the sport, it would definitely be Dale Sr.
Right.
Dale Earnhardt was just icon. There's certain people that were bigger than the sport. I don't think Jimmy Johnson's bigger than the sport. I think that Dale Earnhardt was bigger than the sport. When he passed away, he was on the cover of Time magazine at the beginning. This is when I first got into NASCAR. I'm like, what the hell? How is he on the cover of Time magazine? And I had no idea how iconic of a driver he was. And then all these stories came out about him, about how he would just, he would tell families like, don't ever, say that I did this, but he would hook up families. He would families who needed money, or he would give to hospitals to put on wings and say, please don't put my name on this cancer wing. And he was a very giving person. He was bigger than the sport and an amazing race.
The Michael Jordan.
That's anti-Michael.
Exactly. But he was bigger. He was
That's
definitely
funny.
bigger than the sport. Bigger than the sport. He didn't get bloat face in Vegas betting. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome, man. A golf clap for you, Pete.
Hey.
Sir.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, man. Give the audience, please, your Instagram information and any other sort of social media
And
stuff.
that website again.
Yes, you guys. Yeah.
Start with the website.
Yeah. You guys go to my website, hairandteeth.com. That's real. My Instagram and Twitter is at Pete Giovine, Giovine, and I have a podcast called You're on the List with comedian Brett Ernst. I would love to have you guys on doing a sports theme one. We do top 10 lists about random stuff. This past week we did the top 10 iconic vehicles of TV and film. So it'll be like, the Magnum PI car, the DeLorean.
Kit was on Knight Rider.
I hope Knight Industry 2000 was on there.
Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you. Anytime we hit up NASCAR, we'll definitely be looking to have you back. And like I told Anthony, when we hit it big, and we got to do NASCAR, you're coming with us.
Oh, for sure, man.
Yeah.
Kenyon, I appreciate it,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. Thank you so much. So
Was
before
Dukes of Hazzard on there?
Dukes of Hazzard, yeah. That was like
General Lee?
Dude, the General Lee was number 2, believe it or not. We put the
18 van?
we put the Trans Am from Smokey and the Bandit and 1.
okay.
The 18 van I think was 3 or 4. So
Okay.
Kevin?
Hey, Denzel's whip and training day.
Straight up. Hey, fire.
That's why you needed us on.
Yeah, exactly. Kevin, because you in the office, baby. You in the office. All right, before we get out of here, hot topic, game 1. We don't have to say shit.
Yeah, we do.
Because Cleveland didn't say shit.
Smart and final potato salad.
Not the homemade bunk.
Yeah.
Because she spent that money on a hairdo today.
What was the final score, Kev?
When I came upstairs, they were up 23-24. It's a wash.
Les?
They lost by like 21. It was like 119.
Oh, we don't even have scores.
we don't
That's
have
how
scores.
bad it is, huh?
No, it's like the rest of the playoffs. You turn it off in the mid-fourth quarter.
Well, we'll see what happens Sunday.
I mean, we can talk about what we saw. Let's not get back in transition defense. Let's
Hold up, let's cover the 3-point shooter and let somebody dunk every play. How about that?
That was ridiculous. They did that like 3 times in a row.
Yeah.
How about that?
By
the way, it was 113-91.
113-91. Yeah, they've got it. They definitely have to figure some things out on the defensive end, both in half-court defense and transition defense. Kev?
Kyrie Irving needs to play both sides of the court. Listen, you can get yours, bro, and we love that. But if you don't stop anybody, it means nothing.
He just play it once each half.
Well, earlier Pete said that he thought Richard Jefferson was going to be the MVP of the series.
if he contributes anything, he might be right.
He's like, no, I didn't.
All right. Well, we'll shut it down right here. Thank you for visiting Confirmation Bias. Once again, follow us everywhere on social media. At The League AM is our handle. Visit our website, theleagueam.com. Let us know. Hit us up and let us know if your bias has been confirmed. Once again, Pete, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, guys.
And we'll see you next week.